11 upgrade. Hey guys, today I'll be installing the RCScrews Stainless Steel Screw Kit for the traxxas Aroura-Rustler. Now, if you guys should know, I do have several stainless steel screws already on this RC. I'm just going to go back over and replace the rest of the normal treated screws with the stainless steel. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the 7mm wheel nut that holds all 4 tires on. Next we're going to remove the upper deck, and it's held on with 4 screws. There's going to be 2 up front by the bulkhead, and then 2 back here by the chassis. With the 4 screws removed, the upper deck will pop right on off. Now, since all the links are still connected, we can't take it all the way off, so what we're going to do is we're going to flip it on over, and we're going to remove the 3 screws that hold the bulkhead in place. With the 3 screws removed, and the entire front suspension separated from the chassis, we can now start going over and replacing the treated screws with the stainless steel. As we can see underneath the upper deck, most of the screws under here are already stainless steel from when I built her. I didn't have enough of the treated to build her, so I used some of my leftover stainless steel already. So all that needs to be replaced on this part is the 3 screws that hold the links to the turnbuckles. Then we have over here, we have the 2 screws that go into the caster block and the steering block. The 2 that I have the nuts on, those need to get replaced. The ones that for the shocks, and then we have the 4 in the back of the shock tower. With all the screws from the front suspension switched over to stainless steel, we can now move on to the chassis. There's going to be a total of 10 screws I'm going to be switching out. I have 4 for the receiver box, the 2 that hold the wire tie down, and then the 2 that hold the top of the receiver box are going to be replaced. The 2 that hold the receiver box to the chassis is already stainless steel, so I do not have to worry about those. But for the ESC, I have the 2 that hold it down to the ESC plate, and then there's going to be 4 on the ESC plate I also have to take out. There are 2 that are currently hidden underneath the ESC, but they're right next to the ones that you can see. With all the screws of the chassis now switched over to stainless steel, we can now move on to the rear suspension. First, what I'm going to be doing is we're going to be removing the 4 screws that hold the shock tower on. With the shock tower removed, we can now remove the 6 screws that hold the bottom of the transmission to the chassis. With the screws removed, we can now remove the transmission from the chassis. Now we can start going over and replace all the treated screws with the stainless steel. There's going to be a total of 5 on the transmission box itself. I'm going to be replacing those. On the other side, I'm going to be replacing the 3 on the spur gear, as well as the grub screw on the pinion and the 2 screws that hold the gear cover in place, as well as there's going to be 2 on the bottom of the shock tower we'll be replacing. There's going to be 1 on each axle carrier I'll be replacing, and then there's going to be 1 down here at the bottom of the shocks. With all the screws on the rear suspension replaced, we can now work on putting the RC back together. First, I'm going to take the rear suspension, and I'm going to slide the transmission into its slot, just like that. And then I'm going to screw down the 4 screws that hold the shock tower in place, as well as the 6 screws that hold the transmission to the chassis. With the RC turned over, we're going to take the front suspension and we're going to line it up to the chassis. Then we'll put in the 3 screws that hold them together. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to take the upper deck, slide it into place, push it down, and then we're going to screw in the 4 screws that hold it together. There's 2 up front and 2 in back. All that's left to do now is to take the 4 tires and slide them onto the axles. And each one of them is held on with a single 7mm wheel nut. Alright guys, there you have it. All of Aurora's screws are now switched over to stainless steel. Well, not all of her screws. There's still a couple screws on there that aren't stainless steel, but you can't get them in stainless steel. All of her shoulder screws for her shocks, those are all still this treated steel. They do not sell the shoulder screws like these in stainless steel. So it really does suck, but I can't get my hands on those. All I can do is get those little plastic spacer things to put inside there to use normal screws with. Aside from that, the only other screws I can think of at this time that are not stainless steel are mainly the ones on her rims. I do not have enough to replace all of these in this one size. I will have to custom order a total of, I think it was like 50 I have to order to replace all the screws on all 4 tires. But other than that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time. And that was Aurora's Level 11 upgrade.